Making headlines for this week of July the 3rd. Sunday, Bloody Sunday. As the Greek referendum approaches, will it be the Greek people or the global cabal that gets battered? Stockholm Syndrome. Jim Willey postulates that many Westerners are affected by macro-level SS virus. Basic income guarantee. A country considers, and a city moves forward with, an experiment to provide universal unconditional income, and the final cabal card to play. A reminder from Carol Rosin of what a desperate cabal will play as its final card, apparently before defeat.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. If you look closely enough, one can almost see what is unfolding in Greece at this time. Almost. Arguably, one of the more telling comments that highlights the agenda of the global cabal was posted on the London Telegraph website on July the 2nd. The Live Updates article posted ongoing updates, and the timestamp of one particular posting was at 18:08 or 6:08 p.m. local time. This short posting stated the following. President of the European Parliament, German Martin Schulz, has called for Alexis Tsipras to resign and be replaced by technocrats if Greeks decide to vote yes on Sunday. Mr. Schulz, speaking to German paper Handelsblatt, said his faith in Syriza had reached rock bottom, and Mr. Tsipras displayed the traits of a demagogue. New elections would be necessary if the Greek people vote for the reform program and thus for remaining in the Eurozone, and Mr. Tsipras, as a logical consequence, resigns. If this transitional government reaches a reasonable agreement with the creditors, then Syriza's time would be over. Then Greece has another chance. Mr. Schulz added that Mr. Tsipras was unpredictable and manipulates the people of Greece in a way which has almost demagogical traits. My faith in the willingness of the Greek government to negotiate has now reached rock bottom. What makes these comments most revealing is that they are coming from a man who was unelected to the position he assumes. He is also making his comments as the president of an institution that has no real power or say in the affairs of what is going on in Europe, although they try to convince people that they do. For few listeners, the real power and decision-making comes not from the elected parliamentarians and unelected president of the European Parliament, but rather from the European Council. The comments point to a veiled agenda that the global banking cabal is lining up, not to help Greece, but to specifically prevent Greece from following in the footsteps of Iceland and default on their debts and attempt to dismember the movement of leftist parties that are rising up in rebellion to cabal control. With some comments on the unfolding events of the week, RT has this report.
Well, these uncharted waters, as they're being described, are already having effect. Europe's financial markets were jolted today by the imposition of those capital controls in Greece. Stocks in France, Germany, Spain, other European countries too, all hit hard during initial trading as Greece heads closer maybe to that euro exit door. The euro also lost value on global markets as investors opted to put their money in safer currencies. Let's bring in Max Kaiser, host of the Kaiser Report, to get his thoughts on it. Is it time to run for cover in Europe, or is a Grexit not going to be so horrendous? Where's it going to go and what's happening?
Hi, Kevin. Nice to speak with you again. I've been watching the stock price of Deutsche Bank today, Germany's largest bank, one of the largest banks in the world, certainly with the biggest derivatives book in the world. They are the counterparty to the Greek debt, and their stock got hammered. And Deutsche Bank could go the way of Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns, which would set off a global liquidity crisis that would make 2008 look tame by comparison. Look, the thing about Greece is that the Syriza government has said all along they have no money and we're not going to pay this debt. And now Jean-Claude Juncker has finally woken up to that fact, that what he's been told now for a year. And remember, Jean-Claude Juncker is the guy who said not too long ago, when the going gets tough, you must lie. So anything that comes out of his mouth, we have to assume he's lying, because certainly the going has started to get tough.
Yeah. How tough is it going to get? What's actually going to happen here, do you think? Your best guess?
Well, as I've been saying all along, Greece should Grexit, and now looks like they will Grexit, which is fantastic for Greece. They get a chance to restart their economy. It's terrible for their counterparties. It's terrible for the Eurozone. And, of course, Italy and Spain are probably the next countries to come under the same kind of stress that we're seeing in Greece right now.
This upcoming referendum in Greece, I mean, what's that about, end of the day, really?
Well, it's about a democratic process. The current
what are they voting over? They haven't got much choice, have they?
Democracy, and they're giving their population a chance to participate in their own future and their own sovereignty. I know for people in Britain or people in America, this is an alien concept. They have no longer ascribed to democracy and democratic values for generations. But believe it or not, there is a thing called democracy. It's alive and well in Greece, and we're seeing it played out in Greece, where, incidentally, it was created to begin with.
Yeah. If Greece does bail out, what are the ramifications going to be? Okay, it'll find its feet. We heard someone on earlier on saying in 3 months people were saying, well, who cares that Greece went bankrupt end of the day? What are the knock-on effects? I mean, you said just now it could be horrendous. That's a could be. What's the likely scenario going to play out here?
Well, for Greece, like historically, when countries have defaulted, they have been able to return to the credit markets with no problem. We just saw this in Iceland. Iceland got rid of their bankster problem, and now they're raising money in the global finance market again, much stronger.
Is it like going bankrupt? You can just walk free from all your debts, or the Greek government going to be pursued in future by the rest of Europe?
No, they can be pursued all they want, but it's a global economy. It's global competition. Greece has the right to compete in a global competition and not be a vassal state and not have a colonization of their economy by Germany, the ECB, and the IMF, and the Troika. They have the right to be a free people. The Troika, unfortunately, overplayed their hand. Now they must suffer the consequences. Greece will be fine, but I can't say the same about the Eurozone. I think now they've lit a fuse to total destruction of the euro, and the banks, in particular Deutsche Bank, is the most exposed, Kevin. This is a $100 trillion derivatives book that could go the way of Lehman Brothers. That's an enormous shellacking to the global economy, and I think now we've got to raise the odds of this happening above 50%.
Final one, a recent poll found apparently 57% of Greeks apparently would accept the creditors' terms. Doesn't the Syriza government risk undermining itself by holding this referendum then?
Well, the creditors' terms are, as again, if you listen to Jean-Claude Juncker, he's not a credible guy to have these negotiations. He's a serial liar. Nobody takes the utterings of this maniac seriously. He's a fraud. So I understand that Greeks would love to be in the euro, but they can't also have their sovereignty and their dignity. They must choose between dignity and sovereignty versus being in the euro. You can't have both.
It seems to be coming down to the wire at this time. I use the word seems because we really have no idea what's going on in the background, as you will hear Jim Willey say coming up shortly. There is the global cabal desperately trying to preserve its status quo paradigm of enslavement and control. There is a broken country and its people who are attempting to voice their cry to the world that they no longer desire to remain slaves to this system, and that they are willing to at least put up some kind of fight to help expose the tyranny being imposed upon them. The government is not playing the game of the global cabal, and thus they are being targeted in more ways than just one. Not just to humiliate the government out of office, but also perhaps to attempt to send a message to other leftist parties starting to rise up in power that the same thing could happen to them. European leaders and lenders blame Greece and the choices of its policymakers and wants also to put the debts on to the people, who never democratically accepted those debts in the first place. The power players are attempting to blame the people when unemployment is among the highest in Europe, and those who are fortunate enough to have jobs are among the hardest working in Europe. Dan Bigman wrote in an article for Forbes magazine on July 1st that as the world watches to see who blinks on the Greek debt debacle, it's worth noting one thing that is most definitely not behind the crisis: the working hours of the nation's everyday citizens. As our partner Statista pointed out earlier this year, data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development shows that workers in Greece put in an average weekly shift of 42 hours, even more than Germans, who only manage 35.3. In at least a couple of European countries, it is even less, down to 30 hours per week. There have been reports this week that the Syriza government may be starting to buckle under the pressure, and there has been some speculation of death threats having been made against Tsipras and possibly others in the government, although these are unconfirmed. The government is attempting to act in accordance to what true democracy would dictate, and they have called a referendum on the issue, something that the global cabal definitely does not want. A national policy that is truly guided by the will of its people. The Greek people want to fight, but they are also tired. If they vote no, they may have a chance to reclaim their sovereignty and freedom. Some argue that they may lose their dignity. I might say that they have retained their honor in standing united in what could arguably be considered their darkest hour. If they vote yes, the Syriza government would likely fall. And perhaps the most economically talented man in Europe, Yanis Varoufakis, has said he will resign. He has a good job to go back to in the U.S. He didn't sign up to be discredited. He signed up to fight and to attempt to do something right for his country and his people. If the people are not ready to move forward, I would not stay around either. With a yes vote, Greece will be subjected to another bailout, with austerity cuts coming from whatever government replaces Syriza. Then the Greeks will likely be realizing they made a big mistake by voting yes. Joseph Stiglitz, writing for Social Europe on June 29th, noted that European leaders are finally beginning to reveal the true nature of the ongoing debt dispute, and the answer is not pleasant. It is about power and democracy, much more than money and economics. Stiglitz also adds that it is startling that the Troika has refused to accept responsibility for any of this or admit how bad its forecasts and models have been. But what is even more surprising is that Europe's leaders have not even learned. The Troika is still demanding that Greece achieve a primary budget surplus, excluding interest payments, of 3.5% of GDP by 2018. Economists around the world have condemned that target as punitive, because aiming for it will inevitably result in a deeper downturn. Indeed, even if Greece's debt is restructured beyond anything imaginable, the country will remain in depression if voters there commit to the Troika's target in the snap referendum to be held this weekend. The European project is revealing itself, as Stiglitz states, that in January, Greece's citizens voted for a government committed to ending austerity. If the government were simply fulfilling its campaign promises, it would have rejected the proposal. But it wanted to give Greeks the chance to weigh in on the issue, so critical for their country's future well-being. That concern for popular legitimacy is incompatible with the politics of the Eurozone, which has never been a very democratic project. Sure enough, what we are seeing now, 16 years after the Eurozone institutionalized those relationships, it is the antithesis of democracy. Many European leaders want to see the end of Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras's leftist government. After all, it is extremely inconvenient to have in Greece a government that is so opposed to the types of policies that have done so much to increase inequality in so many advanced countries, and that is so committed to curbing the unbridled power of wealth. Paul Krugman, writing for the New York Times, indicates that he would vote no for two reasons. He writes, first, much of the prospect of Euro exit frightens everyone, me included. The Troika is now effectively demanding that the policy regime of the past 5 years be continued indefinitely. Where is the hope in that? Maybe, just maybe, the willingness to leave will inspire a rethink, although probably not. But even so, devaluation couldn't create that much more chaos than already exists, and would pave the way for eventual recovery, just as it has in many other times and places. Greece is not that different. Secondly, the political implications of a yes vote would be deeply troubling. The Troika clearly did a reverse Corleone. They made Tsipras an offer he can't accept, and presumably did this knowingly. So the ultimatum was, in effect, a move to replace the Greek government. And even if you don't like Syriza, that has to be disturbing for anyone who believes in European ideals. The bank runs in Greece have been ongoing, and even when the banks are open, the withdrawals are limited. Global stock markets took a beating during the week on fears of what a Grexit might mean. Is it really a dark hour, however? There are already offers coming in from Russia and China, so it is clear that Greece has some options to turn to by defaulting on this debt. On June 30th, Sputnik News reported that even Turkey has apparently stepped forward with an offer to help Greece. With willing help coming from Russia, China, and now apparently Turkey, one has to wonder what factor is being missed in the world news that is playing out in this game of brinkmanship. Are there cabal death threats involved, or is there an as yet unrevealed chess move to be made that triggers the whole ball game against this global cabal? There are benefits for Greece and a major blow to this global cabal if there is a default. Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert discuss these 2 points on a recent episode of The Kaiser Report.
I want to look at this piece from Mark Dow, who is a hedge fund manager and an economist. And he says, Greece, it's time. So he said Greece with its own currency would finally get a path to growth. The confidence that things will get better makes even great sacrifice manageable. And in my opinion, the much of the adjustment has already occurred. Yes, sadly, Greece would get one final gut check, but history suggests it would soon be followed by rapid growth. The alternative, financing future rounds of internal devaluation, further economic contraction, seems at best more temporizing. Greece would also emerge with 1, its labor force competitively priced, and 2, greater degrees of fiscal freedom to cushion the pain of transition. So they get their own currency, and then they can have more control, and they could soon see themselves, once they hit default, they could soon see themselves accessing fresh cash, get rid of the old corrupt system, and start something new.
Yeah, absolutely. The bond market will be open for business in Greece the second they default, reorganize, and reopen the bond market. The hedge funds and creditors will not lend to Greece. The history shows that there's somebody will always make a loan in these when there's $200 trillion of debt. There's no shortage of people making loans in Greece. There's a fine credit once you unyoke from that sloth that is called the EU.
Germany is making the bet that they don't need Greece, and that Italy won't be next, and that France won't be next after that. This is definitely the beginning of something new for Greece, but in terms of the rest of the Eurozone, it could be the beginning of something worse for them.
So throw another number out there. The derivatives book of Deutsche Bank is 100 times bigger than the GDP of Greece. And so by Greece defaulting, you put in jeopardy Deutsche Bank, which becomes then the true Lehman moment. Deutsche Bank with close to $100 trillion in unsecured debt, unsecured derivative contracts that are used to plunder around the world. They go under. That's the key. If we really want global freedom from the worst of the worst, we'll be looking back, thanking Greece for setting in motion the collapse of Deutsche Bank.
And then on Sunday, after Tsipras announced that there would be this bank holiday, after the announcement of the referendum that is going to happen on Sunday, where the people themselves, the people who gave him an impossible mission, by the way, they gave him a mandate to 1, end austerity, and 2, stay in the euro. Those 2 are impossible. He negotiated as far as possible. He's got this deal, he gives it to the people and says, okay, you decide now which one is more important to you, and they're going to decide.
The Western leaders and media are attempting to sell several points, and James Galbraith, in an article submitted to Politico, advised against believing these 9 selling points. He advises against believing that 1, the referendum is about the euro. 2, that the IMF has been flexible. 3, that the creditors have been generous. 4, that the European Central Bank has protected Greek financial stability. 5, that the Greek government is imperiling its American alliance. 6, that Alexis Tsipras called the IMF a criminal organization. 7, that the Greek government is playing games. 8, that a yes vote will save Europe. And 9, that a no vote will destroy Europe. The latest news leading up to airtime this week had RT reporting Prime Minister Tsipras as asking the IMF for a 30% haircut on its debts and a 20-year grace period. Keep in mind, this is a man trying his best to follow the mandate mentioned by Herbert moments ago, end austerity and stay in the EU. This request follows information that came about from the IMF. Tyler Durden, writing for Zero Hedge on July 3rd, noted that the IMF may have opened Pandora's box. He writes that in a stunning display of the schism within the Troika, it was the IMF itself which explicitly stated that Greece is no longer viable unless there is both additional funding provided to the country, which can only happen if there is another massive debt haircut. He quotes the IMF statement as follows: "With debt remaining very high, any further deterioration in growth rates or in the medium-term primary surplus relative to the revised baseline scenario discussed here would result in significant increases in debt and gross financing needs. This points to the high vulnerability of the debt dynamics." Durden emphasizes this final point. And the kicker, these new financing needs render the debt dynamics unsustainable. Bingo, says Durden, because that is, in a nutshell, precisely what Tsipras and Varoufakis have been claiming since day one. As expected, a Greek government spokesman promptly said that the IMF report is in line with the Greek government's view on debt. What makes the IMF report even more odd is not so much its content and position, which have been largely known for quite some time now, but its timing. Just 3 days before the Sunday referendum, Tsipras now has prima facie evidence to wave in front of the Greek people and say, "See, we were right all along." So again, there is something extremely odd taking place, that the IMF is suddenly taking this position, when it is the IMF debt that Greece has declared odious. Perhaps the IMF is ready to surrender to that. How this will play out from here? Well, stay tuned for Sunday. To borrow the title of a famous U2 song, it's going to be Sunday Bloody Sunday for either the people of Greece or the global cabal. I'm praying that the Greeks hold out once again. I choose to believe that the world will come to their aid in gratitude once the cabal agenda has been fully blown wide open. In other financial news for the week, it has been reported on the BRICS Post website on July 29th that the 57 founding members, many of them prominent U.S. allies, will sign into creation the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank on Monday, the first major global financial instrument independent from the Bretton Woods system. For those unfamiliar, it is the Bretton Woods Agreement signed in 1944 that led to the formation of the International Monetary Fund and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is essentially the World Bank. The agreement also set in motion the proposed introduction of adjustable, pegged foreign exchange rate system. It is this agreement and its created entities, among others, that have been hijacked and corrupted to create the system that is currently enslaving humanity in debt and fear. The BRICS Post article continues. The AIIB is also the first major multilateral development bank in a generation that provides an avenue for China to strengthen its presence in the world's fastest growing region. The US and Japan have not applied for membership in the AIIB. However, despite U.S. pressures on its allies not to join the bank, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, among others, have signed on as founding members of the China-led bank. Meanwhile, New Zealand and Australia have already announced that they will invest $87.27 million and $718 million, respectively, as paid-in capital to the AIIB. The new lender will finance infrastructure projects like the construction of roads, railways, and airports in the Asia-Pacific region. Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet with heads of delegations from the prospective founding countries on Monday, the ministry said. The AIIB will have an authorized capital of $100 billion, and the initial subscribed capital is expected to be around $50 billion. The bank, which will be headquartered in Beijing, is expected to be officially established at the end of 2015. Longtime listeners to CVN may be familiar with the name Jim Willey, who is making a name for himself doing the alternative news tour, commenting on financial events taking place in the world. If you are one who has been feeling any degree of confusion over everything that is happening with Greece, you're not alone. I have been this to some degree as well, and it seems that Dr. Jim Willey is feeling it also. In a recent interview, however, he steps beyond the topics for which he is known and branches into an area that has become more of a hobby for him in attempting to make some degree of sense of the psychology that causes humans to defend their right to remain addicted to structures that are ultimately enslaving and hurting them. As you will hear, Willey equates this with a larger form of the Stockholm Syndrome.
They want to default in order to remove the shackles, ball of chain on the Greek leg. They want to get rid of these people. They want to get rid of the bankers. They want to get rid of the exploitation. They want to remove the slavery state status. They don't want to be a member of this anymore. So Greece is going to slowly turn east to Russia and China, and it's going to get extremely interesting real soon. I got to admit something. Even though I've got a number of the higher level facts and not exactly much of the figures, but at least the facts and the dynamics in line, hey, I don't have any idea what's going on in Greece. None. I just have an idea of some of these factors at work and the slavery connections that I don't think will ever end. Just think of this one point. Greece did not really have a vote, nor did Germany, in creating the European Union and the common euro currency. The elite did it, and they set up the European Commission, which are not elected. So this is a fascist state creation that has gone bad and has no internal mechanisms for dissolving. And all the derivatives that were set up for the the euro currency, all the derivatives for the banks, they were all corrupted by improper usage of Chinese gold by London officials, with Deutsche Bank blessing and collusion. This is beyond effed up.
Yeah, so what's going on behind the scenes, unless somebody's sitting at the table, it's really impossible to know.
Well, it's even worse than that. I believe it's a situation where you don't even know what the legal and financial structure is of the union or the debt or their central bank abilities or anything. This is a fascist state creation, the European Union, and notice how they support, the Russian sanctions without even blinking or thinking. There's a lot of accusation that the European Union is nothing but a U.S. government corporation puppet zone. So we have no idea what the legal setup is. So how do you know how it will resolve if you don't even know how it's set up?
Let's talk about something that you have observed. This is, I guess, more psychology than it is economics, but it relates to it, is about the subject of the delusion and madness of crowds and how we as human beings have a great propensity for self-deception.
This is a kind of a new hobby sideline interest of mine in the last couple of years. people form psychologically safe assumptions like, well, the system works. Well, the government is out to protect my interests. Well, the military is there to protect our borders and security. Well, Wall Street is there for capital formation, and they're an efficient cog in the system. Wrong on all counts. So you've got acceptance of motives for the leadership of the nation and the maker of rules, including Wall Street. Well, how does that all factor in if you've got a coup d'etat of the government by the bankers, the Federal Reserve, the military, what I call the elite syndicate? We've got a tremendous lack of interest in things related to finance, economics, and politics. You can't just hope for the best, play no role in it, study only what's fed from the mainstream news, and expect to come out unharmed. I've come to conclude something that this is, I think, a very interesting type of conclusion. I'm starting to think now, and I'm well along in this type of thinking, that we've got a macro Stockholm syndrome. And the macro syndrome goes like this. The whole nation is stuck inside the borders. They're stuck inside the U.S. system of rules and regulations. They're stuck with their jobs. They're stuck with their savings. They're stuck with their pensions in the system that's all dollar-based. So they start to sympathize with the Wall Street captors and say, well, I'm not going to remove my money from J.P. Morgan or Citicorp. I'm not going to remove my IRA from the system because if I did, I'd probably damage the system that I'm in. I'm not going to invest in gold because wouldn't that really undermine everything about my job and my savings and my pension? That's the macro Stockholm syndrome. So, is the U.S. public vulnerable to brainwashing from the press with the base psychological framework being their vulnerability to the system for their jobs, pensions, and savings? And I think the answer is yes.
The question remaining to be answered is whether or not humanity will catch on quickly enough to break free from the force of this control. While some around the world contemplate that which they feel is not being done in the world, there are those who are simply going ahead and doing something, even if it is against the status quo. This week comes news from one European country and one European city that are embarking on a basic income experiment, also known as a universal unconditional basic income. In the Netherlands, the city of Utrecht, according to an article on the London Independent website by Louis Doré on June 26th, writes, the Dutch city of Utrecht will start an experiment which hopes to determine whether society works effectively with universal unconditional income introduced. The city has paired up with the local university to establish whether the concept of basic income can work in real life and plans to begin the experiment at the end of the summer holidays. Basic income is a universal unconditional form of payment to individuals which covers their living costs. The concept is to allow people to choose to work more flexible hours in a less regimented society, allowing more time for care, volunteering, and study. The city is also planning to talk to other municipalities about setting up similar experiments, including Nijmegen, Wageningen, Tilburg, and Groningen, awaiting permission from The Hague in order to do so. Going northeast now to Finland, and it seems even more changes might be coming to the country that has been moving forward in areas such as education. The Basic Income website has reported on June 16th that the new Finnish government has committed to a basic income experiment as part of its program for government, published last month. The commitment consists of one line: implement a basic income experiment in the health and welfare section of the program. The main party of government, the Centre Party, and the new Prime Minister, Juha Sipilä, are known to be supportive of basic income, but his new government partners, the populist Finns Party and conservative NCP, have not spoken publicly on the issue. The scant reference to basic income raises some doubts about the government's commitment to the policy. Nonetheless, this marks the first commitment from a European country to implement a basic income experiment that will be the first experiment in a developed nation since the 1970s. Other experiments have been performed more recently in India, Namibia, and Brazil. Every experiment so far has reported very positive results with improved economic performance, health, housing, and other outcomes. It also reflects the increasing interest in basic income worldwide, with prominent European parties like Podemos in Spain and D66 in the Netherlands adopting it as a policy. The government has not released a timescale nor any further details about the experiment. In disclosure-related news for this week, I have been observing over the last number of weeks stories being posted in Facebook that appear to be putting a more negative or fearful spin on the disclosure of our galactic families. Many sources have already come forward to share what they know about civilizations and technologies of a non-Earth origin. There is already more than an abundance of information to show that we are not alone in the huge vastness of what most understand as space, the universe, or, in some more expanded circles, the multiverse or the omniverse. Given that this interaction has been taking place since at least the 1950s, as suggested by sources like Paul Hellyer and more, and given that our planet has not gotten better since that time, there are two possible considerations to account for this. One, that a negative ET influence has already been influencing and controlling the planet themselves, and two, this influence has corrupted aspects of humanity, addicted to power, greed, and control. Available information seems to suggest a combination of the two. Given that there are humans who choose a more positive vibration and humans who choose a more negative vibration, it is fair to assume that we have galactic families of similar vibrations and frequencies. It may be worth reminding some listeners, or perhaps informing some listeners for the first time, of some information provided by Dr. Carol Rosen. The following audio compilation by a YouTube source known as 3D Time Space puts together this information and offers a bit of commentary at the end.
When I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played. That game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are a dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable idea. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card And over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late. In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room. This is 1977. And they were talking about creating a war in the Gulf region when there was $25 billion in the space-based weapons program that yet had not been identified. It wasn't called the Strategic Defense Initiative, at least, until 1983. This weapons system then had obviously been going on for some time that I didn't know anything about. So I stood up in this meeting in 1977 and it said, I'd like to know why we're talking about space-based weapons against these enemies. I'd like to know more about this. Would somebody tell me what this is about? Nobody answered. They went on with this meeting as though I hadn't said anything.
The following information comes from Dr. Rosen's statements to the Disclosure Project, which happened in 2001, a project set up by Dr. Stephen Greer.
This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant. And I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system. And he told me back then that they didn't. He said, go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy. I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat. And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments who have the courage to come forward here to support what Werner von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Werner von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. and we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Werner von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet. And we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth, and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are words that Werner von Braun told me in 1974. And I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more.
This is what she said back in 2001, before 9/11 happened. And those of you who have been keeping up with 9/11 and the truth movement and information that has come out about the attacks know that the so-called war on terror is a complete lie, and we were never after Osama bin Laden, and that's all being exposed now, just like the fake WMDs were exposed in Iraq. Most people are too propagandized that they are unwilling to believe this and won't even look into the evidence. The rest don't care because they don't think it concerns them or because they feel powerless to do anything about it, and I tend to agree with them. The criminals who caused 9/11, who had the connections to all the inside security at the World Trade Centers and the cooperation of the intelligence community in the White House, will never be prosecuted for their crimes. They got away with it. And even if by some miracle we did open up a congressional investigation, prosecute those responsible for 9/11 and put them all in prison, it would be like putting a Band-Aid on a cancer. 9/11 was only a symptom, and we need to treat the disease. Because once the war on terror fails to give the government a reason to funnel billions of taxpayer dollars to corporate interests, they will simply find another excuse. Here we have insiders warning us that aliens will be used as the next excuse. This is why I have been warning people about the 2012 stuff, and to be very skeptical about it if and when first contact happens. Don't believe it right away. The people in charge are using all this money to build an Orwellian-style police state. This is the type of future that they feel most comfortable with, because they have always been in power, and now that they are beginning to lose their power, they are very, very scared. They don't want the kind of future that you and I want. They want everything to stay the same or go back to the way it was, and that's not going to happen. The world is changing very quickly, and it's all up to us what kind of world it will change into.
Assuming that there is truth to this information, that the ET invasion card is being played, this would mean that all the other attempts to control humanity have failed. Therefore, this would suggest, at least to me, a very great reason to not go into fear over any kind of alleged ET invasion, or getting upset over any fearful or negative postings appearing in social media. Hold and anchor energies of love and peace and see this final campaign by the cabal failing, just like all other campaigns have failed. As long as we do not surrender to their agenda, humanity has the potential to shut them down once and for all. And just like the people of Greece, it will happen if we are ready and willing to choose it. In Germany, a ruling by the German Federal Administrative Court in Leipzig on June 25th has apparently determined that the German Parliament, or Bundestag, must now proceed with the disclosure of at least some of its X-files, or information relating to the UFO phenomenon. A partial article appearing on the UFO Chronicles website on June 27th links to a translated article reporting that the court ruled on June 25th the Bundestag is an information requiring authority, therefore applies the Freedom of Information Act, which grants citizens the right of access to official information. The creation of documents by a service of the Bundestag is therefore an administrative act. The translated piece continues. A plaintiff had demanded, citing the Freedom of Information Act, the publication of the document, the search for extraterrestrial life, and the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions for the observation of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life forms. The scientific service of the Bundestag had created this document on the request of unnamed deputies. The court case stemmed from the request from the unnamed plaintiff and also a journalist to see this specific document, and the information was denied by someone in the German parliament. In a separate but related story, RT reported on July 3rd that top-secret files dubbed the British X-Files, which UFO hunters believe could prove extraterrestrials have visited the UK, are to be released by the Ministry of Defence. UFO researchers and a House of Lords peer have campaigned for the release of 18 files about sightings that took place in the UK more than 30 years ago. The government originally planned to declassify the files at the end of 2013, but their release was stalled due to additional processing requirements, prompting speculation about a possible cover-up. After Lord Black of Brentwood pressed the matter in Parliament, the Ministry of Defence says the files will be released to the National Archives by March of 2016. What disclosures these two stories may lead to in the future remains to be seen, but it is at least another step in pushing governments to disclose, and it is also a very good sign that courts in many countries are beginning to make increased rulings against governments attempting to hide information from the people. With Tech News for the week, we start by taking a look at a couple of stories relating not only to technologies but also to resources, and how both can help humanity not only rethink how it chooses to live in partnership with our planet, but also offers ideas for consideration that could make this a reasonable and potentially affordable consideration. There are many buildings, arguably most of which exist in predominantly Western countries or countries aspiring to appear more Western, that use significant amounts of concrete in its construction. As concrete ages, or as buildings are torn down, there can be excessive costs in removing the concrete from the building and then breaking it down for both transport and disposal. An article by Lydia Grozdanich on June 19th, appearing on the Inhabitat website, wrote about a new technology that can, almost literally, erase entire buildings. Grozdanich writes that Omer Hasyomiroglu, a student at Sweden's Umeå Institute of Design, has designed Arrow, a robot that recycles concrete in an energy-efficient manner and separates it from rebar and other debris on the spot. The project won the 2013 International Design Excellence Award in the Student Designs category. Grozdanich continues, Arrow, concrete recycling robot, can efficiently disassemble concrete structures without any waste, dust, or additional separation. It is strategically placed in a building in order to scan the environment and determine the optimal way in which the operation should be executed. This smart robot has the option of switching between pulverizing and smart deconstruction modes, taking buildings down step by step. It enables reclaimed building materials to be reused as prefab concrete elements by utilizing a water jet to crack the concrete surface, separate the waste, and package the dust-free material. After deconstructing the structure with high-pressure water and sucking separating the aggregate, cement, and water, the Arrow robot recycles the water back into the system. Clean aggregate is packed and labeled to be sent to concrete precast stations for reuse, while rebar is cleaned and cut, ready to be reused. The Industrial Designers Society of America, on a page from its website, noted the following about Arrow. The challenge with this project was to separate materials concurrent with deconstruction. Concrete is usually reinforced with a metal mesh inside. Common techniques involve using brute force to pulverize the concrete, which creates a mixed mound of waste materials that needs to be separated before it can be reused or sold as second-grade metal or as a filling material. In order to overcome later separation and ease the transport of materials, the process had to start with separation on the spot. It was a challenge to switch from brutal pulverizing to smart deconstruction. One of the goals of this project was to provide a smart and sustainable near-future approach to the demolition operations that will facilitate reuse as much as possible. Today, operators manually control different-sized heavy machinery, which consume a lot of energy to smash and crush the concrete structure into dusty bits. Water has to be sprayed constantly with fire hoses to prevent harmful dust from spreading. After the work is done, big machines scoop up the rebar and concrete mixture and transfer them to the recycle stations outside the city, where the waste is separated manually. Concrete needs to be crushed with power crushers in several stages, the end result of which it can only be used for simple construction layouts. The metal is melted for reuse. In an email received from the inventor on July 3rd, Omer Hassiomeroglu tells CVN that the unit is not yet in mass production. In response to my question about the unit's functionality with hempcrete, Hassiomeroglu replied that it works well with this material also. He stated that at this time, the status of the project is on hold, awaiting funding. Another great piece of technology that appears to have been placed in a holding pattern because of the great changes and savings it could bring to the construction industry. As global changes continue to progress, more and more people are likely to start moving away from using concrete and may choose a more natural substance such as hempcrete, as mentioned in the last story. Another option, one that has been mentioned a long time ago on CVN, is the use of bamboo. A second article by Lydia Grozdanich, appearing on the Inhabitat website also on June 30th, has an interview with Elora Hardy, focusing on sustainable bamboo architecture. Hardy is the founder and CEO of Ibuku, a bamboo building team based in Bali. Grozdanich writes that Ibuku's incredible bent bamboo buildings take the cake. The Bali-based bamboo building team already has luxury villas, houses, schools, and infrastructure buildings in their portfolio, and is renowned for their dedication to using traditional Indonesian building techniques. According to Hardy, we spend time on the land and with the people who will be using it. We sketch a bit and make simple, real-scale mock-ups on the site. Once the placements are clear, we make a 1:50 scale structural model out of bamboo. This is where the art and engineering happen. Our bamboo builders follow this model and not blueprints to build the structure of the house. There are over 100 people involved in construction, with an average of 20 on site at one time. No heavy machinery, no cranes, no bulldozers. Walls are woven on site, and craftsmen whittle bamboo pins to pin splints of bamboo skin onto the floor one by one. These are truly handmade homes. The question that may come to the minds of most people is, how strong is bamboo, and is it safe as a building material? Hardy answers these questions by stating that bamboo is a truly sustainable, unrivaled timber, with the compressive strength of concrete and the tensile strength of steel. The kind of timber we use, petong, can have as much as 18 meters of usable length. It's lightweight, hollow, round, curving, and tapering. It's also flexible, making it ideal for earthquakes, as it will bend and flex long before it breaks. There are 1,450 species of bamboo in the world, and my team uses 7 of them. It grows on most continents on Earth, and we harvest ours from groves deep in the ravines of Bali and Java, from between 1 hour and 1 day's drive away. It grows on land that's not useful for agriculture and thrives on rain or spring water. In an established clump, each shoot emerges from the ground full at diameter, growing up to 1 meter per day. 3 to 4 years later, it's dense and mature and ready for harvest. The company has even created a natural way to prevent destruction to the bamboo by a beetle infestation. The process involves treating the bamboo with a natural boron salt solution, which makes the wood distasteful to any beetles that may try to eat it. The full article and numerous beautiful pictures highlighting the designs are found on the link in the show summary for this story. As Hardy also notes, bamboo has extreme versatility. If you follow the basic rules and innovate with complementary technologies and materials, the possibilities worldwide are endless. Finally, in health news, as has been said before on this newscast, change is now upon us. To what degree one is able to perceive that change and to what degree one experiences that change is relative and uniquely different, equally beautiful to each individual. As one progresses through one's own journey, and for some they may have arrived at their personal dark night of the soul sooner than others, one may finally hit one's own rock bottom. It could be argued, perhaps, that it is from this ultimate space of surrender comes also one's greatest potential, for everything is rebooted and one can start creating and manifesting again. An article appearing on the Mind Body Green website by Vishnu Subramaniam on June 29th offers insights that some listeners may find meaningful at this time in progressing through any potential rock bottom moment. He shares his moment as being the one when he lost his marriage, his house, and his business all at the same time, while also facing the heartbreak of it all. Subramaniam writes that it just seems like all the possible crappy things that could happen to you all come crashing down at once. For him, what it came down to was attempting to find joy in all the smaller moments throughout any given day, to find lightness, stability, and hope. He offers 7 thoughts for consideration that worked for him and may possibly work for some listeners also. Of course, whether this works for anyone in particular will depend upon how open and how ready one is to feel, to release, and to start again. His 7 points are as follows. 1. Focus on the moment at hand, at each and every moment. What you're going through may be soul-crushing and the worst experience you've had. You may be miserable about what already happened and anxious about what will happen next. 2. Find gratitude for the smallest of things. How do you find gratitude when you're upset about everything going on in your life? It's nearly impossible. That's why you have to leave the big things alone. Don't focus on the entirety of your relationship, career, or life. Once again, go for the smallest of things. What can you truly appreciate now? Can you be grateful for having supportive people in your life? Can you be grateful for having food and a place to live? Can you be grateful for having the internet and online resources to help? Once you start a list of the things you're grateful for, you'll notice that the list quickly starts growing. 3. Ask, how will this situation serve me in the future? While it may make no sense right now to think about how your misery might provide a beneficial life lesson, try forcing yourself. What are the lessons your life's detour is teaching you? What is it teaching you about yourself, about other people, and about the world in general? How will surviving this experience be of service to others in the future? If you get through this experience now, how will you be stronger and more resilient in the future because of it? Look for the messages, teaching, and inspiration of your hardship. 4. Ditch the need for control. Are you trying hard to control the outcome of your situation? Are you doing everything you can every day to turn things around? Is your mind obsessed with the circumstances you're facing? 5. Put your expectations aside. Often in life, we take action with a desired outcome. We set goals. We have dreams and we spend our lives going after them. We expect things to turn out a certain way, and when they don't, we face profound disappointment. Life will work on its own to bring you what is better for you, but it will be hard to tell that at first glance. Permit life to flow like a stream at its own pace and flow. When facing divorce or disease, foreclosure, or a financial crisis, take the steps you need to take, but at the end of the day, let it go. 6. Get in touch with your truth, even if it scares you. Stop showing up in the world to please people or to compare yourself to others. Staying true to yourself means getting clear on your values, identifying your priorities, and living your life according to what's important to you, not to someone else. When you stop comparing yourself to others and trying to fit in to please other people, life becomes lighter and more carefree. Finally, number 7, do something that makes you feel good. This one is simple, but very important. Don't be surprised at how happy a massage, a yoga class, or lunch with a friend can make you feel. Indulge in small moments of happiness and do the things you would do to care for yourself. Don't deny yourself the simple pleasures of life simply because all the big things in life are falling apart. It is one thing to deal with all the changes happening on one level in one's life path. Getting through those hard times into an awareness of oneself and what is happening, and possibly why, begins to lead one toward a deeper understanding and sense of purpose in the world. This comes with its own challenges and rewards. A YouTube video by Ralph Smart offers some of his insights that point to the awakening of one's third eye. For some new listeners, they may not be familiar with this term, and that is okay for now. Smart explains a little bit of this in the following audio clip, but also points to signs that you may find meaningful as to whether you are beginning to embrace the power of your pineal gland or third eye.
5 signs your third eye is opening. So I've spoken a lot about the pineal gland, but I haven't spoken about some of the signs which show your third eye is opening. What is the third eye? The Ajna chakra, or the brow chakra, right in the middle of your forehead. This is what ancients referred to as the seat of the soul. So in many ancient cultures, people spoke of an awakening. From ancient Sumer, Iraq, ancient Egypt, you have the Eye of Horus. A lot of people say, I've got a pain at the top of my head. And that's what happened to me along my journey. I knew I was going through a metamorphosis. I knew something major was happening. It's called consciousness. So what is the first sign I experienced? Heightened senses. Clairvoyance, which means you are now seeing things which aren't there. So you're watching the news and you're seeing things which aren't there. You're starting to think more deeply about what is in front of you. You realize what you see is only a fraction of what actually exists. Therefore, you begin to raise your frequency. Clairaudience. You begin to hear things which have not been said. Who said that? Is it a voice in my head? You are able to perceive inaudible frequencies. You are able to hear the tones people are not uttering. Clairsentience. You are able now to feel into other people's emotions. This is what we call the intuitive empath. So, yes, a lot of intuitive empaths naturally have their third eye open, which is giving them this ability to feel what other people are going through. And it's not easy, because a lot of people are going through a hell of a lot. So you have to learn how to protect your energy. Right now, things are heating up on the planet. So when you embrace those gifts, you now see they are working for you. What's the second sign? Not just believing, but knowing. Many of us right now, we've got a hunger for information, for knowledge. You want to know the truth. You want to know more. We have so many belief systems. What is the problem of just believing? If someone says, that mountain over there is amazing, we repeat what they have just said without experiencing it for ourselves. Knowing is a first-hand account. You have to go through it. You've got to feel it. That is knowing. It is your own experience, not someone else's. That is a sign your third eye is opening. You are now questioning your reality. Can I believe everything I watch on the TV? You can't believe, you've got to know it for yourself. You've got to see that the power lies within you, and the greatest guru is yourself. The third sign, meaningful synchronicities, meaningful coincidences. You are seeing synchronicities as meaningful events. You are now beginning to realize there are no accidents. Everything is held together by a mathematical design. Let's break down the words, starting with synchronicity. Emanating from the Greek, syn, together, chronos, time. Happening at the same time. When you see someone on the beach, down the road, it's not an accident. It is because they are aligning with your vibrational frequency, your wonderful energy. You are now aware of this because the third eye, which I call the first eye, is the ending of duality. There are no colors, black, white. That all disappears. There are no races. In essence, it is the synthesis. Now you step into your true power because you are dealing with synthesis, not separation. The greatest illusion ever created is the one of separation. So when all of these amazing synchronistic experiences happen, you realize why they are happening. And as we change our vibrational frequency, everything aligns to that same frequency. Number 4, you begin to become more health conscious. That's right. I used to love junk food. I'm not a saint. I'm not a sinner either. Eating to live instead of living to eat. White sugar, white bread, the GMOs. When you're opening your third eye, which is inner clarity, more wisdom, more consciousness, you only want to put the best fuel into this human vehicle. You only want to put the best food that can help you become your greatest version. What I realized was that there is a design in this world, and you have to be smart to decode it. But once you start taking care of your body, because if you don't take care of your body, where else are you going to live? More leafy greens, watercress, got the coconut water by the side. That's great. But it's not something which you want to do. What happened to me along my journey, I just naturally gravitated to improving my health, because the body, spirit, mind, the three are interconnected, and that's where the magic happens. And the last sign is that you now see the interconnectedness between all things. That human beings, yes, we are amazing, but we are not so amazing that we have the right to kill animals who we think are inferior to us. The interconnectedness between all things is realizing we are all comprised of energy. If only we would love other animals like we love our cats and dogs. When your third eye is opening, you appreciate all life forms. You begin to take care of the planet by not just becoming a consumer, but by becoming a contributor, by becoming a content creator in helping to uplift the vibration of the planet. And you know it, because many times we see someone and we feel their energy. They haven't even opened their mouth, but you know who you're talking to. This is the times we are living in are powerful, because the veil is being lifted. Everything you think you know is about to be questioned. Thank goodness gracious. And just remind yourself that wisdom will set you free. We are here.
The information offered in the last two stories does not necessarily guarantee success for all people, as each individual will either be ready at this time for this information or the source, or one will not. There is no right or wrong. Each will find what he or she is looking for in the appropriate moment, as long as each is open and willing to receive it, while not blocking potential information through fear or judgments. As a quick announcement for this week, I just want to inform listeners that in this moment of now, I am considering taking some weeks off from the newscast after next week's broadcast as a form of vacation. In this business, news never stops, and sources are indicating that things are starting to happen much more quickly. If I do not take some time off now, I probably will never be able to take some time. Part of this also relates to my physical health, as working so much on the computer as a one-person newsroom takes its toll on me. The goal is to take 4 weeks vacation. Life willing, I will be able to create this. If some kind of significant events begin to take place that require some attention, I will cross that bridge if and when I come to it. In the meantime, I'm choosing to create as much time away from the computer as possible. Lots of bicycle riding, hopefully playing some badminton, perhaps even some tennis, and as much swimming as possible in Stockholm, as I have been unable to do these things for a long time. I also would like to enjoy this period while the sun still shines so late and do more sun gazing. Although I am profoundly grateful and appreciative that so many share their precious time with CVN and with me, I would like to invite listeners who have dedicated this 90-minute period to Cosmic Vision News to use this time instead to do something meaningful for yourself. Take a walk, meditate, spend time with your children, and especially be out in nature. Use these 90 minutes to honor yourself and recharge. So, I am intending to have a newscast next week on the 10th of July, but after that, there will be possibly a 4-week break in the show. And in this week's final words, it would seem that there is a significant increase in what appear to be weapons of mass distraction at this time. No doubt many of you are noticing it, either consciously or unconsciously. Whether it be a continuation of the racially motivated shootings in the U.S., the false flag flap over the Confederation flag, and of course the alleged beheadings being done by ISIS. And by the way, have you noticed that this, like so many other things, seems to not be getting as much coverage as it was once given? A Saudi prince this week claims that he will be giving away $32 billion of his wealth to help the world. The article claims that he will be supporting charities, even though there are so many charities that have been corrupted and controlled by the global banking cabal. Is this the best and most effective use of this money? I can, and I'm sure many of you could also come up with far better plans to put money like this into service without merely handing it over to a potentially corrupt charity. Vertical tower gardens could be built in thousands of cities to provide food to residents. 3D printers could be provided to smaller communities to help them print tools and essentials that will contribute to the community. Sponsor individuals who have created free energy devices. The list is endless of ways that $32 billion could be practically used. At the same time, however, although the article claims the prince is wanting to create a self-sustainable world, he is also the same prince, however, that recently offered to buy luxury cars for Saudi pilots who would help bomb Yemen. It is the same prince who lives in a country that does not treat women equally. It is the same prince who lives in a country that has now been connected to the events of 9/11. Therefore, questions need to be asked. There are many attempts, it seems, by the global cabal at this time to stir up as much fear and as much separation as possible within the minds of the general populations worldwide. There are also campaigns that appear to be demonstrating positive things for the world, but in reality may only be helping to fund organizations that are controlled by the cabal. The list of examples is becoming literally endless, as it seems something to distract people on some level is happening almost every day. Facebook and arguably other social media are conducting their own experiments with mind control and social reactions. This is something that Alice Coppers has commented on in her recent FYI segments over the last 2 weeks. Facebook has provided a new tool that allows people to change their Facebook profile picture so that the colors of the rainbow appear translucent over the picture. This is, allegedly, to allow people to show the world that they support gay marriage. The cabal fully understands the polarization that can take place, and in most cases they are expecting it and counting on it. They want people to get caught up in the issues of distraction because they are issues that are tied to emotions, allegedly of care and concern for others and our planet, but mask the true agenda behind them. This is a double-edged sword. On one side, one feels that it is appropriate to show public support for groups and issues. To a degree, this is absolutely true, and I do not wish to minimize the importance of standing for issues. The other edge of the sword is that if someone like me comes along and attempts to offer a thought for consideration, that public displays of support are merely mind control tools, or that it is one's ego seeking to show the world that one is standing up for issues, then these people are attacked because they are seen as not caring for others or for issues. Here is the point. Standing for issues, however, does not solve the problem that lies at the root cause for the issue existing in the first place. Sure, one voices a public opinion on an issue, or one changes one Facebook's profile to reflect a rainbow declaration of support for the lesbian, gay, bi, and transgendered, or LGBT communities. Congratulations, one has declared publicly one's support for an issue. However, what has that same individual really done on a practical level to help create the kind of change where this issue is no longer relevant? What has this individual really and truly accomplished to create a better world other than to voice support for a cause? Is the individual speaking out against the oppressive governments and structures that are responsible for the issue in the first place? The vast majority are not living their lives for real global change. In order to make themselves feel better, however, to prove to themselves that they somehow care about others and our planet, they give some support to a cause, and their egos require that they share it with the world so that others will see how wonderful they are. If one is starting to feel angry with what I have just said, there must be some degree of truth to it, for it is triggering something within an individual that she or he does not want to confront within him or herself. Becoming a master does not require one to demonstrate one's greatness to others. Becoming a master involves learning to serve, learning to give, learning to stand up for humanity and our planet without the blatant need to be recognized, acknowledged, rewarded, or even patted on the back. This is one of the bigger addictions I believe humanity is being challenged to let go of at this time. Attention is brought to the issue of separation, as opposed to having attention brought on the unity of all humans regardless of difference. The more human attention is drawn to issues of separation, be it race, religion, culture, gender, orientation, physical or mental capacity, political belief, age, personal beliefs, or whatever else, less attention is then given to the empowerment and accomplishment of humanity in oneness. The cabal, over decades and arguably centuries, have mastered their technique for enslaving and controlling humanity. To many it may appear that they still have control, and that they have surrendered themselves to living out their lives as quietly and as comfortably as they can without devoting time, energy, or resources to anything that could upset that equation for the rest of their lives. The fact is, no matter what these people may think, and no matter how hard they may try to avoid what is currently happening in the world, they will not be able to avoid it for much longer. We are on a collision course with evolution. Whether this collision becomes a physical train wreck with destruction and carnage, or whether it becomes a fluid merging with a higher paradigm, depends upon how each individual chooses to approach it. Vishnu Subramaniam outlined some suggestions for how one may begin a process of removing oneself from the depths of despair to find joy in just being in a moment. Yes, it is easier said than done, and I can tell you this from personal experience. However, I can also tell you from experience that the more one practices this, the easier it does become. Although, granted, life seems to throw increasingly bigger challenges to work through, so sometimes it may appear that the practice is not paying off. This I can also say from experience. Moments ago, we heard Ralph Smart commenting on one of the signs that one's third eye is opening, one's ability to perceive and feel what others are feeling, what animals are feeling, and what our planet is feeling. As we align more to these frequencies and vibrations, one is drawn into various changes that suit one's life path in that moment. For some, it may involve a change in diet. For others, it may involve making a hard choice about a job or relationship, and for others still, it might be lifestyle choices, such as my desire to get out and exercise and connect with water at this time. The risk is that some people might become frustrated or scared that the third eye of others is opening and that theirs is not, meaning that they are doing something wrong. This is not necessarily true. First, there is nothing wrong with this. However, the question is whether or not one is making the best choices in the current moment to help support the opening of the third eye. The other question is whether or not the individual has made a contract to experience the opening of the third eye at this time, or perhaps in a future moment of now. If you are looking around at others and seeing them having great experiences, but maybe you are not, try not to feel badly or depressed. At this moment, I am not yet sure if my third eye has begun its opening. There are things I am not yet experiencing that others appear to be experiencing. I am trying to stay at peace with it all and observe. The only thing I can do is to continue to question, to continue to expand my awareness, but I also must try to focus more inwardly on myself and what I am feeling, sensing, thinking, experiencing, and being in this moment. Is this wholly in alignment with the higher vision for our world that I am seeking to want to be in? Weapons of mass distraction may work for a while, but they are no longer working for long periods of time. There are many worldwide who are living their lives sustainably, and they are living in ways that show the world through the example of being that they are standing for issues and not merely giving lip service to an issue through the participation of a social experiment in Facebook or something else. It's easy to talk global change. Talk is cheap. Has one got what it takes to be the example of change and service without expectations? This change will not happen overnight. Be gentle and forgiving with yourself and with others. The important thing is to be taking the step with as much love, honor, reverence, and integrity as possible. Create a wonderful week until our next Moment of Now. So that is the sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on CVN's Facebook and Scene pages, CVN's YouTube channel, and also on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny. Until our next Moment of Now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.